Buongiorno and welcome back to Koi Fish Johnny. Okay, this episode I'm going to do it in the best possible way I can, but it's about the bacterial issue I had recently and the devastation it caused, what the decisions were that I took, how I come about making them, why I made the decisions, how you can help yourself avoid issues like that I've encountered, or more importantly, if you're new to pond keeping, you've got to understand the importance of what you put in your pond. Basically, what I convey is how important it is to understand just how important it is, saying that a lot now, because it's an important subject really. I know I'm trying to be light-hearted with it, but it is a super important subject. But how important it is to understand that when you put something new in your pond, you really do pose an immediate risk to the pond and the ecosystem and the fish and everything that's in there with what you're putting in. So when you do put things in, it's important that you understand the consequences that can come along with adding something new that could potentially be contaminated and the effects it can have. In my case, I added something that had a bacterial issue into my pond, added into the system, and then over the winter it lay dormant. When the weather came up, it ran rampatically through my pond and destroyed everything that was in there. So I'm just going to explain to you what, why, how I decided what I wanted to do. And if you're new to pond keeping, it might be a great heads up to understanding just why, when you go to dealers and people, reputable dealers and people like that, just why they're so anal about the procedures in which they follow to make sure that nothing can be contaminated, because they know the devastation it can cause. They know what can happen. In my case, I had Aromonas, and it lay dormant in my pond throughout the winter. In the summer, in the spring, because we had quite a mild spring, I thought I was in the safe zone and not really got it, and was being a little bit overly paranoid about what could potentially be there, thinking too much, thinking about it. Basically, I'd had the winter to think about it. So when the spring came and the temperatures got to 12, 13 degrees, I thought I was safe. But when it went through the roof, so you guys that don't know, when the temperature went above 15, 16, 17, 18 degrees consistently for weeks, my pond just got obliterated. And I will show some pictures later on about what happened to the fish towards the end. And I'm going to pop them in here, in this, like, whatever side that is to you. I think it's going to be your right side. Or is that your left side? It might be your left side. Anyway, where my hand is, later on when I say we're going to be putting the pictures up, you might want to put a fluffy teddy bear in a part of the way that screen. It isn't too bad. Jaffers was definitely the worst, but you'll be seeing ugly parts of fish that you don't want to see in this hobby. So that's where they're going to be. But they're only going to be later on, because I need to walk you through sort of where I was at with it and what was happening. So as you can see, I've set the pond up. So hopefully you can't see any. Maybe you've seen spot eagle-eyed ones, maybe spotted a couple on the top. I'm going to go down, so I just spotted one. I'll sit down now. Right, I've put that insulation board, my winter insulation board, over the window, just because I don't want you to see the next episode, because the next episode is an absolute belter, and that's because I've got the fish back in the pond. All right, but I don't want you to see them yet, because I just need this conclusion section. So that is to prevent your eyes penetrating my pond to reveal my fish before the episode is released. Because it is a cracker. It's a beautiful episode in so many levels, I think, because it really brings back, I just let the natural feelings come through of experiencing the beautiful part of the hobby, which is picking your fish, which you can get easily addicted to. Or maybe not picking my fish, getting my fish, who knows? Anyway, I've set that up as a premiere because that video is done. So that's going to be coming out on Saturday at 1 o'clock. I'm going to dedicate some time to sit down and watch it with you guys, because I really did enjoy doing the premiere of my last video, Koi Fish Johnny Returned, and I watched it with 43 people, and it was a weirdly awesome experience. And it felt like a little bit of a community sort of vibe there, as well as watching a big daft idiot on screen. Anyway, back to what we're talking about. So you can't see the fish. It'd been October since I'd started to fear there may be an issue within my pond that I'm not going to be able to see for a long time, that could be there, might not be there, could be damaging the fish. So it basically lay dormant all the way through the winter. But all the way through the winter, I was always looking at the fish, which I'm sat in my living room now. I just spin you around. That's where I position myself at night, sitting in there, so I can watch my fish there, which is really significant, because it had got to a point throughout the winter, I was just looking at the fish and depressing myself, thinking, are you going to die, aren't you going to die? And when it started to kick off, when it got a little bit warmer and Marty died and he popped his clogs, the first fish to die, As you know, I did a video on the predicting the death order, which was actually really, really accurate. If I would have let it go as far. So I wasn't enjoying life in this living room, and when it all kicked off and it got warmer and the fish started to really deteriorate, I ended up spending more time in the other living room on the other side of the house, because I wasn't enjoying watching the fish, neither was the family. Was all repelled by the pond away to the other side instead of being magnetised towards it, and it become like a bugbear, like people coming round, friends and family, and they're asking about the fish, and I was really unenthusiastic about it because I was expecting them to die, and it just become a real pain in the bum. And also watching my kids get really attached to certain fish and then them falling apart, coming down, opening the curtains in the morning, and I'm thinking, what's happening here, what's happening there? Then I'm talking to this person, and I'm talking to that person, and then I'm talking to Paula, and then there is no definitive answers anywhere about anything, about what you can do. Like Dr. Paula said, by the way, all the decisions that have been made in relation to the pond and the way to go forward with it were made by me, with the information I received from Paula, on analysing it, Dr. Paul Reynolds, and a few other select people, and also reading the comments that you guys commented on. I really, really do appreciate the comments. So much so, I can't believe how many I got last time. I think I read every single message, and it blew my mind of how much support there was. Good people that said good things, and that were sort of thinking on the side that I was thinking of, because it wasn't a nice thought to have to do what I had to do in the end. So basically, after talking to these people and like liaising with them and going through it for months and months and months, so you're talking like 7-8 months of just fear in this bacteria and ruining my pond journey, to the extent I genuinely, a lot of people might not believe me with this because I am so passionate about the hobby, but I was like, I've had enough of this. I can't handle it no more. It's just more trouble than it's worth. That's exactly the conversations I was having with my wife. It's more trouble than it's worth. And I was struggling to justify how it wasn't, despite it being an amazing hobby that I absolutely love. And we got into this in the most bizarre way, keeping koi, because I really, really do want to do an episode in the future about how me and my wife got into keeping koi. But it is a deep, dark, but enlightening episode that I could potentially do. But either way, we got into it in a very, very peculiar way, and that's why the Tench was so important to us, because he was the one that inspired us into it, to be honest. And then we grew from there, and then to have to do what I did was not enjoyable. Yeah, so going through my options, I'd been through the amount of I'm struggling to get this into a pattern, so I hope you guys can bear with me, because I'm having to go back into the negative section, just so I can be transparent and clear with you guys, so you understand what's happened. I don't really want to do this episode, but I feel like you guys deserve this episode, because you share the journey with me. Some of you share the pond with me. You share everything with me, because we have so many laughs together, and that it would feel disrespectful if I didn't share my decision-making process throughout this. So anyway, that's why I'm going waffling sideways and different ways and whatever. So anyway, we're on the other side of the house. We're not enjoying it. The kids aren't enjoying it because they're seeing fish floating around, half-eaten, and I can't find there's no absolute definitive cure for it. That's the thing. If there was something that you could give it that would definitively cure the fish, there might have been a different route. But when I was talking to Dr. Paula, says you can give them the injections, you can try this and you can try that, but it may not work. It might depend on the individual fish and how that fish system or whatever handles the injection and stuff like that. It became a lot more confusing, and it became well and truly above my station. But what I'm trying to say is it was not definitive, and I could be staying in that stage for a hell of a long time, looking at a pond that I'm no longer enjoying, the family aren't, we're going to the other side of the house, we're hiding away from the pond rather than coming to it, and it's becoming an eyesore in the back garden that nobody wants to look at. And will you shut up, dryer? Okay, we know you dried now, so can you just wind it right back in? All right. But that stage isn't a nice stage because all sorts is going through your mind. You try this, you try that, you try the other. But I'm one of those people then that are looking risk and reward and stuff like that, and the emotional attachment. I'm just thinking it would be easier if this was completely done. And there was no more fish in there. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I'd seen before the definitive decision was made. So we'd seen Marty jump up, pop his clogs, die, with very few markings on him, but unexplained internal sort of marks on him. And then Jaffa started to rot and was really, really bad under his mouth on it. That was absolutely disgusting. I'm not going to put that picture on because that turns my stomach even looking at it now, thinking about it now. God, I've like deleted part of this in my memory because I just wanted to move on. But I'm going back for you guys here. So then the shower, Rosa, after Rosa Parks, she got that wound in the back of her head, just above the back here. If I was a fish, just imagine that. That's where it was. And she wasn't looking great. They weren't acting great. Then a few others picked up marks here and there, and fin rot was kicking in, and the fins were starting to disintegrate, and they were getting marks underneath them. And it just wasn't pretty at all to look at. And on top of this, my pond temperature was 20 odd degrees. I can't remember. It was like 20, 21 degrees, my pond temperature. And at that temperature, you're sort of anticipating your fish being quite rampant in feeding. Now, mine were all down the bottom. Each and every fish, including Eric the Tench, was at the bottom. So the behaviour and the fact that they're not active, they're not feeding, they're not being sociable, they just look glum, the flicking, the battering themselves off the side, the deteriorating, they've got lesions and wounds, they've got mouths falling off open, they've got fin rot, they've got tail rot, they've got it was just disgusting to look at, unenjoyable and everything like that. Now I could have gone and tried injecting the fish to further prolong my agony if I wanted to try that route, and that was presented to me by quite a few people, of which may have been massively legitimate top guys who had reached out and just offering pure support. And to them guys, I'd just like to say thank you, and I'm sorry that I couldn't take the option up. It's just my head was a little bit in bits and I'd reached my threshold of where I could go to with it. And like I'm saying, when I'm talking to Paula, even though you guys were supporting me with potential injections, it may not definitively cure it. It was not a absolute answer, and I could just be going longer and longer. I could be sat here, like literally here today, 2 months down the line, with fish still popping the clogs, not being able to put new fish in. I could be in there with like 2 fish that have survived it miraculously. But then in there lies the problem, because then the disease or I'm led to believe that the disease would then still be in their blood system. So when they excreted it, it would then go back into the water and then back into the new fish if I was to get them. So then there'd be the risk of more death, even though those T2 had survived. But it's just mad, isn't it? So that you could put the Virkon in. This is the thing that I was talking to Paul about, is you can put the Virkon in, it'll stop the transfer while the Virkon's in there. But as soon as the Virkon isn't active about breaking down that bacteria, and then a fish has a poo, because the bacteria is then transmitted from the blood into the feces, and then from the feces into the water, and then into the uninfected fish, and then into their blood. So you can see how that becomes a nasty, horrible cycle of shit, to put it straight. Yeah, just that's what it is. So then you can see how you're thinking from an uneducated perspective, because like I say, I'm a beginner, or relative beginner. I'm thinking bacteria, all these types of things that I don't know about, I don't care about, and I'm reading words I can't pronounce, and I'm like, I literally just cannot go on with this particular scenario. It's been like 9 months, and there has to be an end, doesn't there? So I'm sort of someone that grabs the bull by the horns, or the fish by the tail in this case. That's a really bad joke, but I'm just trying to make it a little bit feel better. It really does not feel good to be going backwards here, guys. It really does not feel good to be going backwards. But I promise you, the next episode that I've already done is a belter, and the last one I think was quite funny as well. And they're upbeat. Right, so my decision was made, and I was like, I'm taking a day off. it was a Monday because I decided all over the weekend. I was looking, I was thinking I can't do it no more, and I'd hit my point then. But obviously the kids go to nursery, and it gives me time to get what did I have, 14 remaining fish in there. And this is the interesting part is, this isn't the interesting part, but the interesting part is their condition when I pull them out. So I decide that I'm going to euthanize the fish, and it's not nice at all, is it? I got the bowl together, took the day off, filled the bowls up with water, and then just put them to sleep in the best possible way I can, using clove oil to sedate them and put them into a deep sleep. It went as good as possible. Halfway through, there was a part of me that just was like, I went upstairs into my office and I was just like, I'm having to take a quick break now because I'm literally like, I think I've got 6 more left to do, of which those 6, for some bizarre reason, I've left the likes of Wanda, Sunshine, and Junior, my favourite fish, in there at the minute. He keeps trying to jump into the net and I can't do it at the minute. And I got Eric left. So I'm taking a little half-time break. It is one of the most horrible things I've had to do, is put my pets down, my kids' pets down. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy, but I know it's the right thing because they're in pain, they're suffering, they're falling apart. That's how I feel. What am I doing with my life here? Murdering fish in the back garden. It's just not a nice thing to be doing, and it goes back to that thing again about knowing what you're putting in your pond. Because if you buy something and you put something in your pond, and you're putting something that's got bacterial strains in it that's going to go into your pond, no matter what, you've got to think about what is in your pond. And in my case, there was a lot of sentimental value in my pond, and there was a lot of nice fish that I really enjoyed. I doubt that I'll ever have a fish with my initial on its back again, like Rosa was. And to be honest, she is a stunning Sankey, that one. Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is, if you're putting something in your pond, you are running the risk of death on all your fish. And would I have one of them isolation little ponds if a fish got ill? I probably would if I could put it somewhere, but I also have doubts of whether it'd actually help or not. So I don't have one at the minute. Would I have one in the future? Potentially. I can't remember the bloody name of them. Isolation pond. It's not called an isolation pond. Quarantine pond. It's just coming to me. Quarantine pond. So would I have a quarantine pond? Yes, I think I probably would. Would it have stopped my situation? No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't, because the fish had already excreted in the short time it was in there, and it got into the water, which then had got into the other fish's blood system, and some fish weren't displaying signs of it. So you wouldn't be able to isolate all your fish. So then how many quarantine ponds do you have for a pond that's 2,000 gallons? I don't know. But would I have one? Seriously thinking about it. And I know there's a lot of you guys, especially a few guys that I really respect, that say I should have one. But like most things in life, they're subjective, and we all have our own particular preferences and opinions, and sometimes people can get really lost in opinion being a fact. And that's one thing that I was talking to Paula about as well, is she is obviously a fact-based laboratory, but one of the things that she gets a little bit passionate about is a lot of people have opinions that aren't facts, and they just think that that is the right way. They don't actually know. To make this, believe it or not, I wanted to make this a short, snappy little episode, but it turned out into a bloody goddamn waffle fest with me. So anyway, going back into the fish. So I got the fish and I sedated the fish, but when I was taking the fish out, I did notice, and this is the part where you're gonna have to cover this part with a fluffy dinosaur or a fluffy teddy or something if you don't like looking at the poorly fishes or dead fishes, because I don't. So I know when I'm on some of the groups, and I am quietly on some of the groups out there, I don't like seeing pure dead fish all the time, or pure rotting fish. So there you are, you have the option to block from there out. Right, so I'll just put a rolling fish in here. So when I pulled the fish out, I started to pull them out, and a lot of them I thought didn't have marks on them. And when I was pulling them out, every single koi that I pulled out of there either had fin rot, underneath marks, the anus, red marks all over it. Basically, I had internal wounds coming out, and it was about to get worse. So in my mind, this further reinforced I was making the right decision looking at this, because it was going to get worse. There was going to be no definitive cure, and I was going to be going round and round in circles. So when I was doing this, it wasn't nice to be doing, but I was absolute in the moment about doing this. Like I say, every single fish. There's fish that I thought were all right and just being a bit moody, but because I've got the window is only like 50 centimeters down and the pond is 1.3 meters deep, it is literally, you don't get to see a lot of the time if the fish aren't acting well or it's winter. You don't get to see the underbelly of them a lot, but you can see there some of the fish. I thought they were fine. Get them out and inspect them, and Jesus, they weren't. In fact, I got them all out and did an inspection on the fish, because at that point it was 13 degrees, 14 degrees of water, but none of the fish had any signs on them at that time. They didn't. But as soon, because I inspected them and I thought, if I see any signs, I'm not going getting them new fish. But they didn't. But then you look at them 1.5 months later, when the temperature's gone up above 15 degrees consistently for week after week, and it had just eaten the fish. And it was horrible having to bag them up and dispose of them and go through the emotional torment, and then clean the pond with PP and empty it all, and then have an empty pond sat here for nearly 2 months, which then also becomes, when you have people round, they're like, what's that? You know, like if you've got a friend that's come round that hasn't seen the pond before, and they're like, what's that? Swimming pool? Like, no mate, it's my koi pond. Well, where's the fish? You can't get away from having to explain yourself again and again and again. So there's part of me halfway through that was like, I'm done with the hobby, and I genuinely was done with the hobby. I thought, but I love YouTubing, and I thought maybe I could change the channel into something different. I don't know. And then I thought, I actually love koi so much, and I shouldn't let this one bad issue with Mr. Bacteria stop me from enjoying this beautiful hobby. Be it now I understand just how fragile the environment is that koi live in, and how important it is to understand what you are putting in there poses a risk to the fish. It really, other fish that are in there, or everything that is in there, and just how devastating something like this can be. A lot of pond keepers have not experienced something like this. Unfortunately, I joined the gang of Bacterial Crew 1, 2 and had it, to which I've had a lot of people come out and tell me that their experiences and share them, and that makes me feel like less of a fool. It does, because you feel like a goddamn frigging idiot, and you're like, why have I done that? Why have I gone along with that? Why have I put that in there and contaminated the whole pond? What a goddamn idiot. And you start blaming yourself, and then you realise other people who are cleverer than you, smarter than you, been in the hobby longer than you, and they've also encountered issues, unfortunately. So you're not the only idiot on the planet. Well, not the only idiot, because there's plenty of them, but you're not the only one to experience something like this, and it doesn't make you out to be an idiot. I use the word idiot lightly, I'm just having a bit of fun. In short, I chose to kill my fish because I'd reached my point of enough was enough, and I took action. I sedated the fish. The decision was mine. It was not a like, for instance, Dr. Paul Reynolds did not tell me to kill the fish. She just said, you could try this, but it won't definitively work. So I'm the person who stands by the decision that was the best for me in that particular moment, for me, my family, and moving forward. It wasn't an easy decision. There's a million things that I could sit here and tell you about, and I'm sure there's people sat at home going, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. But at the end of the day, I'm king of the castle. No, I'm joking. At the end of the day, I made the decision that was best for me. It wasn't a nice decision. I hope that it's an understandable decision that I took. And if it isn't, and that's your opinion, that's fine. But you're entitled to that opinion. But for me, I tell you what, I feel 1,000,000% better now. I'm enjoying the hobby, especially over the past weekend that I've just had, because I've got them in now, as you know, because I've got the blocker there, so you can't see past it. But yeah, I'm buzzing. Like, with literally, like, I want to end it really good, because you can see there's a seat there. I've been sat there watching the fish, having a beer, watching the fish. You all right, mate? What's your name? You know, I wasn't really like, what's your name, and asking them, but I was like enthused by the window. Both boys have been sat with me, but like one on the knee, one on another seat, and we're watching the fish, and we're just having a storm of a time. The wife's picking her fish, and we're picking names, and they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and coming up to feed really well. So that's a massive success story that's coming your way. I think I'm putting that out at 1 p.m. on Saturday. I can sit down and watch the premiere, hopefully with quite a few of you. There was 46 last time, so hopefully we're gonna have a bit of fun this time and watch that positive one. Like a premiere for people that don't understand, because I didn't understand it until last week. I watched the video with you guys, not in the same room, because that'd be weird if we were all teleported into the same room. It'd have to be a big room. A premiere is that's the time it's been released, and it allows everyone to get together to watch it. A few people say hello, I'll be there, and I'll wave with my emoji waving hand. Goes like that. If you've not moved the teddy bear, there you go, it's a wave. But yeah, so that episode, the new car going in, is a belter. And it's got quite a lot of the family in as well, which is buzzing. Yeah, so hopefully that's the end of the negativity and we can move on. Koi Fish Johnny, the bacterial tunnel of hell. I'm out of it. It's done, it's behind me. And I never, ever, ever, ever want to go there again.